Similar to Ari Aster, I am also interested in revisiting 2020 from the year 2025, but unlike him, I don't really have anything insightful to say. Instead, I'm just going to be revisiting my opinions from that year. So this is the third year that I have revisited my top 10 films of the year 5 years prior. 2018 covered, 2019 covered, it is 2025, so I'm going to be revisiting the dreaded movie year of 2020, because clearly the worst part of that year was the lack of films we received. So let's just dive into this thing.
2020, a year none of us will forget. Before we get into it, a lot of disclaimers. First off,
I kind of missed that tiny apartment. Now I just got this big old empty basement.
couple honorable mentions. Mank was a fantastic movie by David Fincher that just barely missed my list, along with His House, which was a brilliant horror movie. We don't get a lot of those. It was really great.
I'm gonna be honest, I have not even thought about the film His House until now, so I can't really give an updated opinion about it. And almost similar to Mank, where I certainly have thought of it, but I only watched it the one time, and so it honestly could go either way if I like it more or less than when I first saw it.
Alright, let's get into it. My top 10 movies of 2020. Trial of the Chicago 7. Definitely not one of Aaron Sorkin's best films, but nevertheless, it's still great. This one fell on the...
I don't know if Aaron Sorkin has stood the test of time. Clearly, he has written some of cinema's modern classics, and maybe I was just feeling this film back in 2020, but there's no way it would still be on my list if I were to revisit it now. And it's not because it's bad. I honestly just think like my taste in film has improved since 2020, and what I love so much about that film I've seen done so many times better by both newer films but also older films as well that surely inspired this.
Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is another movie you can watch on Netflix right now. This is a masterpiece of a script, and immediately you will realize that this was taken from a stage performance. It has it written all over.
This film I do think is going to hold up, and mostly due to the Chadwick Boseman of it all. Clearly there was somewhat of a controversy with the way the Oscars were structured that year, where a lot of people thought he was going to win, and that obviously happened after the fact I recorded this video. But because of the legacy he left, and this being one of, if I'm pretty sure this might be like his final film, he really does give a fantastic performance in it, so I could see this still making my top 10 today.
Tenet is peak Nolan, with all the good and with all the bad. I really struggled putting this movie on my top 10 because it's really not a good film.
I don't know what I was thinking. I actually do understand where I was coming from by calling it not a good film, but I think back in 2020, I really struggled this balance of what I personally enjoyed versus what I thought was good filmmaking. Like, I thought there was a standard that a good film had to reach, and I could still enjoy films that didn't reach that. But honestly, at this point in my life, I just don't really care. Like, am I gonna praise Tenet for the amazing script and well-written dialogue? Perhaps not, but I think it is an enjoyable film, and really that's good enough for me. So who knows? I might even place it higher than number 8.
So your opinion of this movie may solely depend on your opinion of Pete Davidson. I happen to love Pete Davidson.
I have actually seen Pete Davidson perform stand-up live since recording this, and I don't think my opinion of him is less than what it was in 2020. But what I will say is I think between this and that one Peacock show he had that I don't even remember, he's really milking this semi-autobiographical performance that he seems to have in every piece of media. And truth be told, I just haven't seen this film since 2020, so at the time, I think during lockdown, this kind of hit a little different than it would now if I were to go and see it in theaters. So simply due to the lack of good films this year, it probably still would be on my top 10 in some capacity.
This movie gave me one of my favorite classic film-going experiences. You go to a movie knowing little to nothing about that movie, and then what little expectations you have are shattered immediately. Then it's followed by not being able to tell the tone of this movie. Is it a bad drama, or is it a very clever written comedy?
But that is absolutely absurd, because it is clearly a well-written comedy. I have seen this film since 2020. I love it even more. This is one of my favorite films of the decade, and the fact that I shoved it down in 6th place is a travesty. I don't think I understood what taste was back then.
Surprise, surprise, another controversial pick on this list that either people are going to love or think this is the most pretentious try-hard film of the year. To be completely honest, I think it's both. I think this is a very pretentious movie that is trying so hard to have these deep, deep meanings. I just think most of those deep meanings connected with me.
My lack of vocabulary is clearly showing here by just using the word pretentious to be a fill in the blank for I don't understand how to talk about this movie. But my opinion on Charlie Kaufman films still stand, both written and directed. I just love everything he touches. And I do think this film is rather underrated. I think there's a handful of people that have seen it and just don't care for it, but I also think there's a lot of people that still have yet to see it. So let this be a glowing recommendation to go watch this film. I still find it rather profound with two incredible performances from Jessie Buckley and Jesse Plemons.
So Soul is the most recent addition to this list, but the second I saw it, I knew that this was one of my favorites of the year. It's an instant classic, and if this wasn't Pixar, I'd probably say this is the best movie that this studio has ever made.
I don't know about Soul. I'll just say it. Like, I think there are some really good elements of it. I do think this is a great example of us being starved of just any sort of media that Soul is just like a masterpiece at the time. And perhaps it is quite good, but like I don't think it's top 5 Pixar. Maybe top 10 on a good day. So considering the year, like, sure, let's toss it in there, but it's not one that I like care to revisit often.
Riz Ahmed is, I think, my favorite performance of the year in a role that is so beautifully written.
Yeah, I mean, this film is still just complete masterpiece. Kind of a shame I put it down at number 3, but if I remember my top 2 correctly, it might still fall there. And clearly this film got rather snubbed at the Oscars. I think he should have been more of a consideration for Best Actor, Best Picture. It is just one of those films that continues to stick with me from the first time I watch it, and I am always thinking about the themes, the messaging, but mostly due to the central performances, which I can't emphasize enough, are just really great.
Spike Lee gives a Spike Lee movie in 2020. That is the best way to describe The Five Bloods.
The crazy thing is, back in 2020, I had only seen a couple Spike Lee joints. BlacKkKlansman was one of my favorite films the year it came out, but besides these two recent ones, it might have only been Do the Right Thing and Malcolm X. And so the fact that I've seen almost his entire filmography up to this point, I think like my perspective on The Five Bloods is much different than what it was in 2020, but I still think it's really something special. It's just interesting because the reasons I liked it back in 2020 are much different than why I liked it now, and that's kind of neat that even like as an early Spike Lee watcher versus now being someone who is more familiar with all of his body of work, there's still stuff to love about this film, and I would probably agree it's still my second favorite of the year 2020.
Palm Springs is a simple movie, and to be completely honest, that's exactly what I needed this year. It's a basic plot. It really is.
That's so sweet. I was really sad in 2020. Yeah, I mean, like, this isn't a movie I've seen a ton since. I have maybe watched it a second time since 2020, but I still stand by how it made me feel at the time. And I do think that, like, in the moment of recording this video, December 2020, this was the film that impacted me the most in a positive direction. And I do think, like, the time loop element being completely stranded in the same day-to-day life was especially relevant to COVID lockdowns, which isn't the most insightful observation, and it feels quite obvious, but I think at the time it was just very meaningful to me. So I do need to give this like another watch because it is shocking how little I have revisited it considering it was my favorite at the time. So who's to say, maybe watching it in 2025 it's just completely average, but I can't say that I hate seeing it as my number one when revisiting this video. As far as other movies that came out that year that I saw post recording that video, the only two that really stand out are One Night in Miami and Minari. Specifically Minari, which I think would be somewhere in my top 3 of the year. It was just one of those situations where it had such limited release and I don't even think video on demand was available at the end of 2020. And so it was well into 2021 until I even had the option to see it, but once I did, I thought it was completely brilliant. But there you go. Those were my top 10 films of 2020 at the time. This is definitely a bummer of a year to do a video like this because even looking back in hindsight, we were starving for good films. But I would love to hear your thoughts on my list, and please list down below what other 2020 films am I missing. Perhaps there's even some from that year I still haven't seen. So please do that, and I will see you next time.